is good to be here with you all. It has been a moment, a long moment since I've been here. It's good to be here. Dr. Seema Jilani joined the International Rescue Committee Emergency Medical Team as a volunteer. She described a UNRWA worker who had his leg blown apart so that it was barely connected from the lower to upper part. She recalls holding his hand and dabbing his forehead and lips with water. She had no morphine to give him, just her gentle touch. He died holding her hand. When interviewed about what she witnessed in Gaza, she said people were barefoot and looking for garbage bags to use for tents and lumber for fire. I have worked in war zones. I've worked in refugee rescue boats off the coast of Libya. I've worked in Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Lebanon, and Egypt. I have never treated this many war-wounded children in my career. No system is built to withstand what these people are going through. On one day, 4 out of 5 of the children they were trying to resuscitate were under the age of 15, and the scale and magnitude and severity of the injuries, especially in terms of burns, is something she has never witnessed before. She recalled an 11-year-old girl whose face was all black and whose arms were burnt down through the flesh to the bones. The smell of burnt flesh permeated the emergency room and will stay with me for a very long time, she said. When asked why she went to Gaza, she replied that it was an honor to serve in Gaza beside the other doctors and nurses who serve their community. As a pediatrician, she reminded us to remember the orphans whose fate will remain with us. According to UNICEF, there are currently 17,000 orphans in Gaza to date. Dr. Tahir Ahmed from Chicago worked in Khan Yunis at Nasser Hospital with the Med Global team. In a recent interview, he recalled that there were mass amputees, some children amputating both legs with no anesthesia. Women were having C-sections without anesthesia and then departing in a few hours in order to make a bed available for the next delivery. There was a rise in stillbirths and complications with pregnancy, and no pre- or postnatal care was available. Dr. Ahmed works in a level 1 trauma center in the south side of Chicago and has never witnessed anything like this before. He recalled seeing children walking barefoot and looking for food and water. There was a mass migration of people, many fleeing in the middle of the night as they heard F-16s overhead. He said people were consistently being dehumanized and re-traumatized. No place was spared from bombing. Nowhere was safe and could serve as a refuge. He was there during an 8-day telecommunications blackout, and doctors were working 24 hours a day. They could not even check on their families. There were only 24 medical staff left because approximately 300 medical staff had been killed. The ones left had not been paid in the last few months and were subject to attacks and arrests. He said that when people were killed, many bodies were left in the streets, and healthcare workers had to bury them with their bare hands. Thousands were sheltering in the hospital, even though it was not a sanctuary. People were dying from simple infections that could not be cured with medicines that they didn't have. He recalled one man with a jaw totally shattered and who needed plates and screws to repair it, and there were none. Then medical staff could not help him. He pointed out that this compromises the man's ability to eat and drink in order to survive. The healthcare system has totally collapsed, Dr. Ahmed said. His takeaway was that people in Gaza are so resilient. The medical staff can do so much with little resources, and they are modern-day heroes. But why are we pushing them to their limits, he said. Dr. Cornel West, in a recent interview, said this about Gaza and the now approximately 30,000 people dead, including 11,000 children and 67,000 wounded. It is a moral and spiritual issue. For some, it feels this way, and it also feels as if this is a war from the global north onto the global south. Dr. West understands that Black and Indigenous and people of color liberation in this country and around the world is intertwined with the liberation of the Palestinians. And as Audre Lorde reminds us, we were not meant to survive. For those of us from marginalized identities, that reminder becomes our lifeline. For Palestinians who have faced erasure for 75 years with occupation and many wars, the mantra of survival is a part of their identity. Existence is resistance, they say. But today, existence feels more dire for Palestinians in Gaza, and human rights groups, scholars, medical workers, politicians, religious leaders, journalists, humanitarian organizations, and many more realize that existence may not be a choice. As countries withdraw their support for life-saving organizations like UNRWA, that supports Palestinian refugees not only in Gaza, but in surrounding countries. As Unitarian Universalists, we have engaged this particular moral and spiritual issue over the past 40 years. A part of what we have embodied in our work is our principles that call for affirming the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. To that end, Unitarian Universalists have used actions of immediate witness and resolutions passed at General Assemblies to call for an end to Israeli occupation and settlements, support for a peaceful process leading to a two-state solution, that all parties support laws of war, the Geneva Convention, including international law, to support Palestinian self-determination, a call for Israel to honor international humanitarian law, and we have also opposed religious and racial supremacy. And last October, in response to this humanitarian crisis, the UUA signed a letter with the Churches for Middle East Peace calling for a ceasefire and return of the hostages. What does that look like in practice? Since last October, we have witnessed congregations hosting teach-ins regarding Gaza, participating in letter-writing campaigns to senators and representatives to call for a permanent ceasefire, hosting fundraisers for children in Gaza, and participating in marches calling for a ceasefire, such as the last one in Washington, D.C. on Martin Luther King weekend, with over 400,000 people attending. And last November, your UUA staff created a webinar on this subject and provided congregations with resources for further learning. In Salvation, Black People and Love, Bell Hooks says, love is profoundly political. Our deepest revolution will come when we understand this truth. if love is political, then whatever we do to help those facing devastation and erasure is a revolutionary act. To be revolutionary as Unitarian Universalists in such a moment as this will take resilience and perseverance. Beloveds, as an Iraqi, Arab, Muslim, Unitarian Universalist minister, I have spent most of my life studying resilience. For most of us on the margins, resilience is not an option, it is an act of survival. As someone who lost many family members to war when the Iraqi people faced their own erasure, and in response to such profound suffering within my own family, I found a way through by helping orphans in Iraq. To remain immersed in trauma is not what helped us. We had to act. Though we grieved immensely, we needed to work through our trauma by taking action at the same time. To act became one way to be resilient during one of the most difficult times of our lives. This concept of resilience, known as sabr in Islam, is one that we have seen the Palestinians embody. To remain resilient on a daily basis, one must focus on being close to the divine through prayer and faith. The two parts in Islam of faith are shukr, or gratitude, and sabr, resilience. So in order to be faithful, we must always practice the act of gratitude as a tool for resilience. Randa Hamouda left Jabaliyah district early on in the war and went to Khan Yunis refugee camp. There were no tents when they arrived, and so they stayed in the sun getting burned for days. She said of the current situation that they wait 2 hours for the bathroom and sometimes there's no water. People are getting diarrhea and influenza, but they thank God in all situations. We are steadfast and strong, she says, as she laughs with others while she makes bread. Gratitude and humor is resilience. Raza Munir Arafat lost a leg and is in a wheelchair. Estimates are that currently 10 children a day will have at least one limb amputated in Gaza. Raza lost her parents and siblings and now stays with an aunt and uncle that took her in. She is in the south now and holds on to hope that she will walk again. Her uncle tells her she's going to get a prosthetic leg. Resilience is being grateful for the support of family and community. Samah Khalid Naji is an 18-year-old woman who lives in their ruined home amidst the rubble. Their house was bombed with her parents and brother inside, and her father's chest and arms and mouth were injured. She recalls that she wanted to be strong for her sisters, but she cried when she saw her father. Her family fled to Al-Aqsa Hospital and set up a tent, but then realized it was unsafe. So they went back to their home, to the rubble. Her father survived, and he thanked God for this mercy. He said, "I built this home myself, and I can do it again. Nothing will stay the same if God wills it." Though everything was destroyed, their beautiful garden of figs, guava, peppers, cactus, basil, and flowers, they are grateful to be alive. Samah has taken to writing poetry on the rubble as an act of resilience. And we've seen that Palestinian resilience has shown up in the form of scholarship and the arts, Scholars have created a wealth of literature regarding Palestine, and artists have created poetry, paintings, films, music to teach us about the lived experience. And now the world has risen up for the Palestinians. This struggle for the past 75 years is finally seeing some unprecedented moments like we have never seen before. Not only is the whole world marching for the end to occupation and liberation, but we are all witnessing this happen also in the courts, with South Africa taking Israel to the International Court of Justice and Palestinian Americans suing the Biden administration for their support in the erasure of their families. Some report that Palestinians are looking at what we are all doing here and around the world, and that is giving them hope. One man was interviewed by Palestinian American imam and activist, Dr. Omar Suleiman. And he said that people were praying together in a mosque that was bombed because they felt grateful for what they were witnessing around the world. They felt hopeful that somehow their struggle was not only going to liberate them, but also the rest of humanity. To face death every day and be grateful for the struggle that will save all of us is amazing resilience that I can't even imagine. But we Unitarian Universalists may understand how they feel because we recognize that we are an interdependent world and that all of our liberations are wrapped up in the liberation of others. As Martin Luther King taught us, we are not free until all of us are free. And as the first South African president, Nelson Mandela, remarked 3 years after South Africa became free, we know too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians. Even though Palestinians are facing erasure like never before, they have insisted on their own existence by documenting this erasure right before our eyes. Despite over 100 journalists being killed in the past 4 months, those who have survived risk their own life in order to document what is happening in Gaza. Like Wael al-Dahdu, an Al Jazeera Palestinian bureau chief in Gaza City, and one of the most famous journalists throughout the region, who returned to reporting the day after his wife, daughter, son, and 8 other family members were killed. And on January 7th, his son, also a journalist, was also killed. And so were 2 of his nephews. Still, Wael reports after so much personal loss. Keep documenting, because this is an act of resilience. And community journalists have taken to filming what is happening in Gaza by posting on social media. Bisan Auda had a social media presence in which she documented her life prior to October. She had 44,000 followers before and now has 3.8 million. She begins each recording with the words, "It's Bisan from Gaza, and I'm still alive." Bisan didn't mean to be a war correspondent, but now risks her life since so many journalists have been killed. She has fled 7 times with her family to move further south, and she says, "People tell me to go to safety, but I won't feel safe until this ends and there's a ceasefire." Motaz Azaiza is a photojournalist. His photo of a girl in the rubble was named as Time's top 10 photos. Due to personal threats on his life, Motaz has left for Qatar. Both Bisan and Motaz have entered people's hearts through their social media posts, and those outside of Gaza worry when they don't post something. That has been something beautiful to witness. Since Arabs and Muslims have dealt with so much dehumanization and media bias, social media has become a game changer. It has served to humanize those in Gaza, which is what we need now more than ever. We need to connect with others, be reminded of their humanity, and remember that they are all just like us. As someone who suffered through the dehumanization of Iraqis, through the masterful use of mainstream media, I wonder what would have happened if Iraqis had documented their own erasure in real time. Would this have served to soften the hearts of those who hate and destroy? In a recent interview, when asked how he stayed resilient while risking his life to show the world what was happening, Motaz said, "Love is how we stay resilient." Beloveds, love is a political act. Love is a resilient act. Love is at the center of all that we do to bring hope to a broken world. It's at times such as these that my prayers are that Unitarian Universalists and all of our congregations will continue to rise up and do what must be done to live fully into the call of our faith. But it will take a resilient love like that. But we understand that in order for humanity to survive, we must love fiercely and act boldly. Indeed, love has been the only way we have survived. May it be so.